Welcome in. It's Monday again. Little forewarning here. I got a unruly dog here in the background, so if she acts up a little bit and starts whining and barking, just ignore. We'll muddle on through. We'll start it off by Clemson gets their first baseball sweep this season, or ACC baseball sweep. I should correct myself there. They had a couple of early season sweeps, but first ACC sweep of the season, and kind of go up to Raleigh and dominate the Wolfpack. Kind of had their way with them. Pitching was, for the most part, pretty good. Hitting was good. Team has now won, I think, 9 of 12, going back to that sweep at the hands of Wake Forest. Beat Coastal Carolina coming right off of that sweep, and they've only lost 3 times since. Lost to Georgia, lost one to Florida State, lost one to Notre Dame. They've won 3 consecutive series. They're now 500 in ACC play at 9-9. And if you want to get into a regional, you best be at least at 500 in conference play. So the team's not quite dead yet. Up to number 22 in the RPI. Again, they're 9-9 in the league. Boston College is second place in the Atlantic. They're 12-9. They played 3 more games than Clemson has, but that's where Clemson goes next. They go up north, big series with BC. You need to go up there and win that one. I said before the North Carolina State series, I'd be happy if they came out of Raleigh with 1 win, and they go up there and take all 3. It's time to start adjusting expectations. Ryan Ammons is back. Rob Hughes has been lights out since he's been back. Jackson Lidley, who has not pitched in, 3 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, he is going to start tomorrow. So it seems like things are starting to come together for this team. It doesn't sound like Billy Barlow will be back this season, but the one big piece on the back end that they really not gotten what they thought they'd get out of it is Willie Wise, who I still think struggling with a bad back, but getting guys healthy, starting to come together. And again, Eric Backer said when they turned it around, they were going to be a hard team to deal with, and that has turned out to be the case over these past going on 3 weeks now. Kennesaw State at home tomorrow night. Then again, they head up to Boston College for 3 games. I think Clemson's recruiting demise was a little that people have been harping on the past couple of weeks, especially seeing some of the momentum that the rival there in Columbia has had in recent weeks. I think the demise of Clemson recruiting has been vastly overstated. If you go back a year ago, Clemson began spring practice with 1 commitment, Nathaniel Joseph. He ended up decommitting. Most of these guys Clemson's in on now. You're not going to see decisions from them until after June officials. A large majority of the top 250 or the blue chip guys or whatever you want to call them, a large majority of them still undecided. That the validity of this class will be decided in June and July, coming off that big official visit weekend in June. But Clemson does pick up 2 commitments last week. Drew Wood has commits out of nowhere Thursday. No fanfare, no publicity, nothing, just announce it on Twitter. As a fan, those are kind of always the commitments I like to see. It tells you the guy doesn't care about the publicity, doesn't care about the build-up, doesn't care about the suspense. Let's just get it over with. This is where I know I'm going. I'm going to put it out there. As a guy who covers recruiting, oh, man, I hate those. I had just talked to Drew, and not a hint that a commitment was coming. So you have to write those things up on the fly. So only downside to that, but always as a fan, always love those commitments with no fanfare, man. It gives you some good insight into the character of that kid. Now, that's not to say that people that do commitment dates and announcement ceremonies and all that that they're not good character kids, because they are. I mean, I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing if I was in their shoes. You know, they get out. I mean, why not take advantage of it? But that it didn't stop with Woodaz. Evan Brown Schuler commits on Saturday. That was one I think a lot of you guys saw coming. He shut his recruitment down weeks ago. Kind of just been waiting on the announcement. Big time pickup for this class. You know, I think 24/7 rates him as a defensive lineman. They don't rate him as a defensive tackle. If you look at Rivals, I think that you get a better idea of what kind of player you're getting, because they rate him strictly as a defensive tackle, an interior guy, and they rate him just outside the top 100 and the 7th best tackle prospect in the country. So that just Nick Easton just keeps killing it on the recruiting trail, man. This defensive line, if they can add a couple solid ends in this class, which I have confidence that they will do, to go with the ends they took in 2023. I think this defensive line is set for a few years. At least there's a very solid foundation laid, and you can build off of that. But again, don't get hung up on the fact that Clemson's only got 7 commitments, or it's 8 now, 8 commitments, and it's still only April. The calendar's not even turned to May yet. I see a comment here. Right here you go. Last June, Clemson set a program record under Dabo Swinney with 12 commitments in June alone. I think it was the busiest I've been in a 30-day stretch since I've started covering Clemson. It was a very busy month, very fun month, and I expect similar results from the official visit weekend this year. We already know some of the guys that are coming. That list is going to grow as we get closer to that thing. So if there's one thing that Dabo Swinney and Clemson does well, it is these big-time recruiting events that last overnight, you know, stretch out across a whole weekend. They really know how to roll out the red carpet. That's why they hold them on the first weekend in June. They want to set the bar extremely high, and they want every kid that's there that weekend to go to their next official visit and the ones after that and compare it to that very first one they took. And they set the bar so high. And for some of these kids, you know, it's just that weekend's all it takes. Another very good point. Anytime you take a kicker, it is going to skew the numbers a little bit. I don't care if he is considered, like Nolan Hauser, I think On3 calls him the number 1 kicker in the country. I think some of the kicking services call him a 5-star. But the recruiting services are always going to rank those guys as a low 3-star guy, and it's gonna skew the numbers. It's gonna drag the rating down a little bit. Make no mistake. This is hard to answer. I think the kids that seriously consider Clemson, that aren't just out looking for that offer, because Clemson is so selective when it comes to handing out offers. If you get an offer from Clemson, that is a feather in your cap. And there are some kids out there clout chasing who just want that offer. They have no intention of ever going to Clemson. But for the guys that truly have interest in Clemson and get to know the coaching staff, I don't think it's hurt them with those guys. If you're talking about outside perception, maybe a little bit over the past couple of years, but I don't think it hurts near as much as rival fan bases like to tell you it hurts. These kids, you don't hear any former players. It is a rare occurrence you hear any former player that played under Dabo Swinney speak out against him and talk negatively about him. And the times that I do see it, it comes from guys with an axe to grind. and I'm not sure they are the most unbiased. But I don't think it's hurt. No, I think what hurts Clemson the most is NIL. They're not going to get in bidding wars, so that hurts you with say quarterbacks, top-rated receivers, because those are two of the positions going to command the highest NIL paydays. And Clemson's not getting in bidding wars for high school players. They have an NIL program. You don't hear it get talked about. It is something they are very proud of, the way they go about doing it. From everything I can gather, it is more incentive laden. I'm not saying freshmen don't get anything, because I think they do, but I think their NIL stuff's more incentive laden and focused more on keeping guys that are already on the roster. And with this small alumni base, you do not have the money to go out there and get into bidding wars for all these different players. I think it makes your evaluations that much more important. But to me, I think that hurts Clemson with some wide receivers. I think it hurts them with some of the quarterbacks. But as far as Dabo being outspoken, I don't think that's hurt them near as much as fans from rival fan bases on the outside looking in would like to tell you it hurts, if that makes sense. Who is better out of high school, Drew or Wade? And why are they ranked so low? I can't tell you why they're ranked so low. I thought Drew was I thought Wade was a little bit underrated, and I think Drew's a little bit underrated, and I think Drew's probably going to be a little bit more polished coming out of high school than Wade was. We all saw Wade was ready to play as a freshman. We've all seen the potential he's got. I think Drew's going to be every bit as good as his older brother, possibly even better. I can't tell you what goes into all those rankings, man. It's as much about politics and what camps you attended, what camps you didn't attend, as it is about sheer talent. Again, we talked about on this here before. Peter Woods got dinged for having too short of arms. That is part of why he got knocked down from 5-star to 4-star. It's kind of one of those make it make sense type of deals. But yeah, I'm on board with thinking both Woodaz brothers were a little bit underrated coming out of high school. If it was me doing the evaluating, and I am definitely not a professional talent evaluator by any stretch, but I know how to look at film, and I know what jumps off at me and what doesn't. And I would have had both those Woodaz kids as low 4-star guys. The new shades are 2 for 2, my man. I wish I told somebody last week that I wish I'd have started keeping count when I started doing those things. I didn't know it was going to catch on the way it did, so I don't even know who the first time I did it. I think I started doing it in June last year after the official visit weekend. I think that's when I started doing it. It might have been a little bit later, but however many I've done, I'll tell you right now, I've missed on one. I had one of them wrong. So those things they've worked pretty well for me, man. Yeah, but that's a big part of this. I talked to Wade after the Orange Bowl about, the possibility of maybe getting to play with his brother at the collegiate level. He said it was something they'd always dreamed of growing up. Drew said the same thing when I asked him about it. Playing with, getting the opportunity to play with your brother, and you both kind of, might even play the same position. But because I could see Drew starting out as a Sam. I could also see him starting out, maybe even as a safety, but it'll depend on what happened. But, just imagine if they're both part of that linebacker room, man. That would be pretty awesome. No, Clemson doesn't have tech. Him how well that oil money's working out for them. I think they've had over 30 players jump into portal since the end of the season. 30. Over 30. I think that is very telling How many of these kids are aware they can take more than 5 officials? That doesn't start until July, but you can bet pretty much most of them are. I don't think this is going to affect Clemson too much, to be quite honest. Most of these kids, they, even if they don't say it publicly, they know which schools they're favoring. And I don't see a school hosting a kid they don't feel they have a legitimate shot at landing. I don't think you're going to see a bunch of kids taking 10 visits each. I just don't think it's going to work out that way. This is a rule that does not make a lot of sense to me. To me, 5 was fine. If you want to let them take more than 5, so be it. I don't have a big issue with it. I don't see a bunch of kids. I don't think we're going to see a bunch of recruits taking 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 visits, because I don't think schools are going to want to pony up and pay it for guys they know they have no realistic shot at landing. And we're talking about, a percentage of the kids that are just going to be looking for the free trip, because there's going to be some of those. I don't think it's going to affect Clemson all that much. Again, they only host officials that one weekend in June anyways, during the off season, during the summer and spring. June, that first weekend, that's it. Dabo just started doing that last summer. You see him host a few in season, but that first weekend in June, that's the big one. I just don't think it's going to have much of an impact on Clemson. There she goes. Any QB news yet? Nah, not really. Hey, come over here and settle down. No, I don't. Nothing. I think we might end up having to wait through camp here next month before Clemson moves on to another guy. I don't know yet. We'll see. I haven't really heard anything about anybody. Definitely hasn't been any new offer go out. I haven't heard anything substantial enough to start talking about. Dabo is the ultimate players coach. He is going to say that about every guy. I remember he said the same thing about Kyle Parker, when he's a first-round Major League Baseball player. He's an NFL quarterback, That's just who Dabo is. I think it says more about the guy who won't put his name on it than anything, But that's who Dabo is. He is going to talk up all of his players. I don't see anything wrong with it. We all know which ones are NFL talents and which ones aren't. I kind of like the idea of a head coach always having his players back on the record or off the record. To me, that's the way it should be. Malcolm Green, jumped into portal right after the spring game. I haven't really, heard anything. I would just say that this is a sign of him being passed by some of these younger guys. That's the way I took it. It comes right after his, post-spring meeting with Dabo. Kind of, to me, that means the writing's kind of on the wall there. But yeah, that's what I think it's about. Just being passed by some of the younger guys. He's had a hard time staying healthy. Over the past couple seasons, hasn't played a ton. But you watch guys like Toriano Pride and Jaden Lucas, and even freshman Shelton Lewis in that spring game, and it's not easy to see. I mean, it's not hard to see why he might think it's best for him to move on. I was wondering if I was going to get asked about this. I don't think much about what DJ had to say. I think it's in poor taste. I think him calling the offense basic and calling the coaches saying they called play scared, I think that's all crap. He knew what the offense was when he signed on to play for it. It was an offense that won 2 national titles and went to 6 playoffs. It wasn't that basic. I think a big part of the offense. Let me also say, I have made no bones about the fact that I thought the scheme had gotten stale. Make no mistake. But I also think a big part of Clemson's offense problems the past 2 years have been quarterback play. Don't tell me the coaches are scared to call plays when they're calling 29 passes in a game when you're only completing 8 of them. And Will Shipley's running up and down the field. They basically go away from the run to let you throw the ball because the opponent is giving you the pass and you still can't complete one. But it's the scheme and it's the play calling that's the problem. That's about all I got to say about that. I think it comes off as sour grapes, poor taste. That kid is. I think he is a very good kid. I think he's a very high character kid. I also think he looked like he wanted to be anywhere but on that football field in Charlotte during the ACC championship game. I think he was ready for that thing to be over. I don't know what happened to DJ. I spent a lot of time thinking about it the past few months. I kind of lean towards him not having the mental makeup to be a college or a starting quarterback at one of the nation's premier programs. Now, whether that be because of some things he was going through or that's just his mental makeup, period, I don't know. I know he played very banged up in 2021. I thought last season he started pretty well. Thought he played fairly well up through that Wake Forest game. But then when they came back home and he threw those 3 picks against Syracuse, that was it. It just went off the rails outside of one half against Miami. That first half against Miami, he was just not very good. If the coaches didn't trust you to throw the ball down the field, I think there's a reason why. Maybe because passes are selling 10 yards over guys' heads or they're ending up in the hands of the opponent. But I found it a little funny that he called the play calling scared when that coaching staff was still calling passing plays against South Carolina when he was 8 of 29 and South Carolina was giving him the pass. And he still couldn't hit one, yet it's the play calling. I don't know. I thought those comments were in poor taste. Offensive lineman. I don't really have nothing new. We'll see who gets here for officials in June. I like Clemson's chances with Casey Poe, but now that Alabama's jumped in and offered, I don't feel so good about that anymore. Still think Clemson's in okay shape with Michael Anui. I used to think they were in excellent shape with Jamison Riggs. He's hard to get a good read on, but I don't feel nearly as good about him as I did at one point. Let's see if they can get William Satterwhite here. He was just here a couple of weeks ago, just picked up an offer. He told me he wanted to get back, but it wasn't set in stone that he'd be here in June. Gonna have to see which guys show up that weekend and take it from there. I don't expect any commitments before that from offensive linemen. I'll be surprised if we get one from that position before June. Wide receivers, the numbers too. And Mike Matthews is being recruited as an athlete, so he wouldn't count against that number. Still love where Clemson sits with Alex Taylor. I had a long conversation with him Saturday night, I think it was. Friday night, maybe, I can't remember. He visited right before the end of spring, said he's always made to feel like a priority, and he was the first offer. I think Clemson ends up with two of those guys between Alex Taylor, Braylon Staley, TJ Moore, Cam Coleman, and Wesco. I think they end up with two of them. Again, I'm not counting Matthews because they're recruiting him as an athlete. And I feel pretty solid about where Clemson is with Matthews, just to be clear. Wouldn't say I'm calling them the favorite at this point, but they are right in the thick of it. I probably feel the best about Taylor and Staley. But again, I had to see which ones, actually make it here. And what comes of that official visit weekend. See, that's another thing I agree with. I think DJ was given every opportunity. Every opportunity. I think the coaching staff probably stuck with him longer than most coaching staffs would have. So, I mean, he had every opportunity to show what he could do. And I know the wide receiver corps has suffered, riddled with injuries the past 2 years, something not totally out of his control. But he had plenty of opportunities, ample opportunity, and for whatever reason, it just did not work out. I don't think he was the best fit in this offense. Again, he knew what offense he was signing on to play for to begin with. I have been told he was told that they would tailor some things to fit his strengths. That doesn't mean changing the whole scheme. That just means making a few tweaks. Not sure he ever earned the trust of the coaching staff to get out there and them to say, hey, go out there and let it rip. If you're talking about Winston Watkins, probably not. Probably not. He's a 2025 guy. Probably not. He worked out at Dabo's camp last year. That kid, he's not the size of Sammy, but man, he can run and he's got good hands. Yeah, that's one thing Alex Taylor talked about, the new offense and taking more deep shots, more double moves, giving the wide receivers a little more freedom with inside their routes. So it's going to be intriguing for some of those offensive guys, particularly wide receivers. Some of them might be in wait and see mode, want to see it first. So might need I'm trying to say it might end up paying dividends more in 2025 than it does in 2024 after they've seen it in action for a season. Don't discount that other kid, Liam. Golly, I forgot his name again. The walk-on kicker, the one that kicked the 55 or 51-yard field goal in the spring game. Liam Boyd. He looked pretty dang good too. All right. With that, I will bid y'all farewell. Don't forget, Check us out, allclemsontigers.com, part of the Clemson Maven multimedia platform covering all things Clemson sports. We got you covered. Appreciate all y'all tuning in, and I will talk to y'all again next Monday.